Why do you think she cheated on you? Oh, until I'm a provider, I guess I can't have that woman that I dream of. A woman wants to know.
The boy wants to serve himself. The man that's looking for purpose wants to fight a fight beyond him. They're trying to weaken us from that war. The diminishing levels of testosterone, air quality, the water quality, even the distraction from the problem itself.
Welcome to the Path Podcast. Today, I'm sitting down with a remarkable young man who may just be the youngest guest I've had on this show. Mr. Adam Lewis, even though he's only 31 years young, he has already experienced his dark night of the soul. He's questioned his purpose. He's dug down to do the deep work, and he's now sharing his magic with other men. He is a co-founder of ManCamp. He's got a powerful growing community called Men's Alchemy here in Toronto, and he is a former founding shiphead at Othership. Adam Lewis, thank you for joining me today, brother.
Thanks for having me here, man.
This is a real full circle moment.
Sure is, yeah. And I feel like the timing too, November 1st,
Yes.
on a month of celebrating masculinity, that feels great to connect with you here.
Yeah, and if any of you know Adam and you're looking at him and you're like, something's different about him, he's shaved off his, like, when I say mustache, like that was like a proper stash.
It's pretty iconic.
And you've had it for a long time.
Yeah, since it's been 26 months since I last shaved it.
Wow.
And yeah, truly. And even what it represents as a symbolic mark on my face as a homage to the masculine bloodline,
Love
where my grandfather actually sported a mustache his entire life. And in his passing, it was actually during a medicine ceremony that this download came through that it's time to steward the stash.
Love it.
And
Steward the stash. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Get a shirt made like that from Movember. Yeah. Steward the stash. That's a good one.
Yeah, exactly. So
Awesome.
feels, November 1st, shaved it this morning, and I immediately took 15 years off my
Absolutely.
appearance.
Yeah,
so.
so now you're like 16.
Yeah, exactly.
So today, as you said, it's November 1st and the kickoff of Movember. And, you know, this is a really timely conversation, why I want to sit down and speak with you, because as many of you may know, Movember, which originally started in 2003 in Australia to bring awareness to prostate cancer, has now morphed and evolved into the largest men's mental health charity in the world. And they are doing some amazing things around the world for men's mental health initiatives and support. And you being someone who is deep in men's work and supporting men of all ages, all backgrounds with ManCamp and Men's Alchemy, you know, what I think is so remarkable about you is the fact that you are very young and you've already gone through this awakening, I'll say, and you are now already stepping fully into your purpose. And when we met, you were a very different Adam. So we met back in 2020. You were on vacation in Nosara. Just like many people, come down vacation, surf, maybe some yoga, and then like the jungle bug got you.
Yeah, truly. It's, such a full circle moment, because you got to see me sort of at that moment right before coming into that dark night of the soul, where I think Nosara has that initiatory element to it, but it was literally months after that I came home back to Canada mid-lockdown, and I was running my own company at the time. It was a beverage company in the CPG space. Shortly after coming back, I fell in what I thought was love. I was in this lustful, intense relationship, struggling to keep my business going. I ended up actually moving to Quebec with my partner at the time, and in what felt like one fell swoop, got my heart broken. My girlfriend cheated on me and broke up with me. I was bedridden, depressed, started numbing with alcohol, marijuana, and couldn't get out of bed to even run the company that I'd spent 4 years pouring my heart and soul into, and ended up shutting that down too. And after leaving Ontario, moving to Quebec, and then having to come back home, I got to face the amazing opportunity to decide which parent to move back into. And all this divorce trauma surfaced, especially when I decided to reside with my mother. So in one fell swoop, it was like romantic life, career, father relationship, carpet pulled right out from under me, and enter that dark night of the soul that you'd mentioned. Yep. And that's when the journey really began. Yeah,
that was a perfect storm to have you really, I don't want to say hit rock bottom, but sounds like you were pretty close, and you had to take a hard look at your life. And you had two choices then. You know, you could keep sinking, or you can pull yourself out of it. And as you mentioned, it was during COVID, so it was a tough time. And you know, COVID for many people was that the catalyst. It was that rock bottom moment for people where they were at home with their wife or husband, off work, and stuck in an environment, and they just realize that they don't live their life anymore. And for you, I can't even imagine what that was like to have those three major hits happen at once. But let me ask you something now, reflecting back on it, would you change anything about what happened at that point in time in your life?
As painful as it was the best thing that happened to me as well, because like you said, that dark night of the soul, that rock bottom, it's something I needed to hit. And I think everybody actually needs to hit for the transformation to emerge that perhaps spirit or creator or the universe does have planned for us.
Yeah. So what I would love to hear is, if you look at each situation, the cheating, the job, and the father wound, can you tell me what lesson you learned from each situation?
The through line, and that's brought me here, it was in a medicine ceremony that this was revealed to me. But yeah, what the medicine told me was, Adam, your masculinity is broken. And at the time, I actually didn't really know what to make of that. I came out of the ceremony with a lot less pain than I went into it with, after going in with such deep prayer to absolve me of the pain that I was in at the time. And oftentimes, I know we can go in with these intentions. The medicine will show us where to go next, but not necessarily tell us how.
Yeah.
So I came out and said, okay, my masculinity is broken. I didn't even know what that meant at the time.
Sure.
And I got to go home and integrate and just sit with that. Like, what does that mean? Like, what does my manhood even mean?
Yeah.
What does being a man mean? And that's what actually took me to following my purpose and my passions. And what I thought was, okay, what do men do? We build, we serve, we protect. And for me, building, and also I think as a man, so much of what we do, it's like being in our bodies, being in our physical nature. So I thought, what's something I'm really passionate about? And at that period of my life, it was diving in the cold water. So being one of those yahoos jumping in the lake in the middle of the winter, and then warming up in a sauna. And I didn't have a sauna at the time, so I went ahead and bought a trailer, and I built a barrel sauna on that trailer so I could tow it to the lake and jump in the water with my friends and come back in and shelter in that sauna.
That's awesome.
And just that process of building the sauna
You built the sauna yourself.
Yeah.
Good work.
Yeah. Well, not just myself, because the lesson that came out of that was I actually didn't know how to do it all.
Okay.
So I had to learn to ask for help and ask for help from other men.
Okay.
And this was this unconscious healing working through me of learning collaboration, learning how to ask for help, that vulnerability that I really was not good at before. And I'd say I'm still working on. But that was the initiation into, I think, into this path that I'm on. And what ended up leading me to the Othership chapter, where I really got to step further into that purpose of being in service with my passions.
Yeah, before we get into that, I want to jump back to the broken masculinity part, because I believe that many young men and older men, but a lot of young men are dealing with broken masculinity. And when you mentioned your girlfriend cheated on you, why do you think she cheated on you?
I think she felt like she was taking care of a boy.
Yeah.
I felt in that relationship, there was so much of the service that I was not providing to her, ended up falling on her to take care of a boy that wasn't there to fend for himself and his partner, that was seeking the comfort of almost like a mother-like character. And I can't blame her for, maybe leaving a bit more politely would have been nice, but I think the nature of the unconscious and the power of the feminine also probably knew that this guy needed to learn a lesson, and a gentle departure wasn't going to be quite enough. So I don't fault her for it. I don't blame her for it. Again, I think I reflect back on that being the greatest lesson I could ever have been served up. But that was a boy in that relationship. That was a boy running that company. And that was a boy who had his ego and his spirit fractured, broken, brought down to rubble.
Yeah. Well, I just want to, first off, thank you and acknowledge you for going there and being that honest and seeing it for what it is. And I sensed that when the message you got was your masculinity is broken. And I feel a lot of men, young men, are experiencing that because they don't know what it means to be a man. And thing I'm really excited about having this conversation and sharing it with men of all ages is, I believe young men right now are very confused. I believe they're very lost. I believe they lack guidance. And I also believe that by design, young men are their masculinity is being suppressed. Okay. Whether it be testosterone levels dropping, whether it be free porn, legalized weed, easy access to video games. When a man lacks purpose, he searches for pleasure. And I believe a lot of young men are numbing themselves, distracting themselves, and they don't even know how to engage with the feminine. So I would say, yes, there is an epidemic of broken masculinity in the male population. Men don't know what it means to be a man anymore, and I believe we're living through a time right now, and I'm very excited about this, that what it means to be a man, what it means to be a strong man, a provider, a protector, is being redefined. Before we got on, we were talking about, like, what does it mean to be a provider these days? Like, am I supposed to, like, take care of my girl, fly her to Europe, buy her purses, spoil her with all these luxury goods or whatnot, like we see on Instagram? Or as a provider to, give that safety, the structure, the frame, taking care of, the bills so she can be in her feminine and do what she needs to. Not to say she can't contribute, but I don't think men know how to show up for the feminine right now. And there's been this controversy or this, debate about what a woman is supposed to contribute, what a woman's role is in the relationship, in the workforce, around equality and all that. And then with men, often many of them wanting to be taken care of, almost being treated like princesses. And that doesn't work because, as you said, your partner at the time, maybe she didn't feel safe, she didn't feel taken care of, she didn't feel provided for. And I believe that people cheat, people stray when their needs aren't being met. So something within her wasn't being nourished, wasn't being felt secure. And whoever it was that she got whatever from, at that time, she believed that's what she needed. And I'm assuming she was, fairly young, around your age as well, and probably didn't have the ability to communicate and express herself. And it might have just been the guilt and shame that had her not be able to communicate and apologize and take ownership of what she did, right?
Yeah, and just to unpack that a bit more, it was exactly that, because it was in fact her ex that she'd cheated on me with, an older man, a successful restaurant owner in the region. So that brought up so much on, like, what does he represent compared to what I represented at the time? Like a stable, mature provider versus this struggling boy that was just so out of touch with his manhood in so many ways. And just reflecting on that, that trauma is definitely also what reoriented me in terms of like where I need to look. And the feminine, I think, has that ability to just be so intelligent and showing men where the work needs to be done.
Yeah. To be with a conscious woman is the deepest work you'll ever do, and to be with a woman who's unconscious while you are developing your consciousness is a lot of work as well, because you have to really be able to hold space and lead by example and really feel into your heart and be with her, through the journey, both with a conscious or unconscious woman. And one thing I wanted to touch on for any young man or older man watching this, thinking, well, until I'm a provider, I guess I can't have that woman that I dream of. A woman wants to know you have a plan, you have a purpose, you have a mission, and that you're doing something about it. A woman will admire you, she'll respect you, she'll appreciate you, even if you don't have lots of money, even if you can't afford all the expensive stuff yet. If she believes in you because you believe in yourself, because you have a vision and you're taking action, that's attractive.
Yeah.
But the problem is a lot of men, they talk a big game, but then they don't take the initiative. They don't have a plan. They flounder around. And if you can't honor your word, if you can't show up in integrity, she can't feel safe with you. And if she doesn't feel safe with you, she's going to find someone else she feels safe with.
Absolutely. What's really coming to mind as you say all that, it's leadership.
Yeah.
It's not leadership of others, but you're taking leadership towards your own life.
Yeah.
And I love the David Data quote. It says it's, she wants to relax gently into your direction. So it's up to us, I do believe, to like find that own, like that path, that purposeful path. We all have one. It's within. Yeah. But we need to block out all those distractions of what we're being told we need to be pursuing, the material gain, the superficial nonsense that does, I think, really distract us from that inner path.
Yeah. And that was so much of my life. Like when people ask, why am I not married yet? Right. So much of my life was about making that hurt little boy inside me feel better about himself. You know, I needed the cars, I needed the clothes, I needed the watch, I needed the hot younger girl that was convenient because I didn't love myself yet. I didn't accept myself. And I would spend so much time, energy, and money to project the image of who I wanted people to see and love and accept rather than do my own work. You know, and for me, that all came to a climax on my 40th birthday when I took a step back and realized, wait a minute, all my friends are married with kids, thriving businesses they love, and I'm single, I'm lonely, I'm in debt, and I don't love my business anymore. And for me, that was a catalyst that kind of had me take a step back and like, whoa, you know. And one thing you mentioned, so David Data, for anybody listening or watching, Way of the Superior Man, read it. From the Core, John Wineland, read it. These are amazing books that are going to help you to understand how, as men, we need to show up in the world today. And another thing David Data said, that a woman wants you to have a mission and have a purpose, and she wants you to want that more than you even want her. Like, that has to be your driving force in life. And as a result, she will love you, she will support you if she believes in you, but you got to believe in yourself first. And I do believe that we all have a purpose. We can all create a mission for ourselves. And it doesn't have to be like, you know, I'm going to go build schools in Africa, or I'm going to start a big nonprofit, or whatever it is. It's have a purpose, have something you're getting up for in the morning, something that drives you, that you're excited about, you know. And if you don't know what your purpose is yet because you're still caught up in the superficial, then ask yourself, why are you spending so much time and energy to buy all the fancy shit that you don't really need? What part of you doesn't accept yourself, or what part of you don't you accept that you need to overcome so that you don't need to put so much time and energy into wasting money on superficial shit? You know, because if that's what you're putting your time and energy into, well, then you're going to attract women that are into that.
Yeah.
You know,
what we put out, we receive back. And, you know, so much of what you're reflecting on too, it's this prompt I put into my men's group that came up in conversation with another brother was, what threats are present in your life? Mm-hmm. What enemies exist? Yeah. And one of the most common answers that came out of the dozens was cheap dopamine and false pursuits. Okay. And when we think about, you know, that pursuit of purpose, which you prompted that question, and I was like, you know, what would I do? And like, I feel so grateful to have, you know, found all these aligned missions that I lead myself in. But to ask someone, you know, just find their purpose is like, it feels intimidating. Sure. And I think a great starting point is that process of, well, what enemies are showing up that are even keeping me from finding that purpose? And holy crap, man, like our phones, technology, and what we're talking about too, and how that departure from our humanness. Because I think when we can calm the noise, quiet the noise, find stillness, that purposeness and like that mission, it's going to arise. Mm-hmm. But I think it is unique for everyone. And when we were told the virtuous one is build the school or mm-hmm. start the nonprofit, but it doesn't have to be the most grandiose thing. But like you said, like women are going to appreciate a man that's like taking charge of his life on a mission. Maybe it's humble, but there's beauty in that too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And removing that need to compare and compete mm-hmm. where his mission's greater than mine. It's not about that. I think that's, again, the beauty of this new rise of masculinity where we're so much more collaborative, and no matter a man's mission, as long as we're supporting it, like we can just call it at that.
Yeah. And to that point, I think it's so important that in a relationship, you admire one another, you inspire one another. And there's that deep respect of, I see you, I love who you are, I respect what you're doing. And there's that mutual admiration. You know, I think that's what's really missing in a lot of relationships, because when the guy starts messing around or the woman starts like, you know, just losing respect or the admiration for one another, that's the beginning of the end. You know, and to your point about finding purpose, you're right, it doesn't have to be some grandiose thing, but it could just be like, what do you like to do for other people that lights you up? Some people just love to have conversations. Some people love playing with dogs or you know, it can be the most simple thing. It just start. You don't have to have it all figured out. Just start with something and allow yourself to experiment and explore it and see what that feels like. Because once you get a taste of purpose, once you have that feeling of fulfillment, you're like, whoa, this is like a whole other level of enjoyment and satisfaction, right?
Yeah, and as you say that too, it's I reflect back on, I think, those shared journeys of both of us, like having those moments of like, oh shit, and that's like, it hurts. And I think it's a Jungian quote where it's our greatest gifts and our greatest wounds, they come from the same places.
Love
and
that.
that's where that,
I like that one. Yeah.
right? Because it's
Absolutely.
like you realize like, oh, like the way you're in service now to men and the world with your work, it's beautiful, but
Thank you.
it's because,
It all comes from my wounds.
right?
Being bullied, dealing with racism, not feeling like I fit in. That version of me that I became served me in many ways, but I could also see how, even though I made lots of money and had the cars and clothes and girls and all that, I had to go back to that little boy who was bullied, picked on in the schoolyard, who didn't feel good enough, and make peace with him and realize that there are many, many other boys who got picked on, didn't feel good enough. And regardless of what I've achieved in my life now, my little boy can speak to your little boy and see each other and be like, hey, regardless of what you look like now, I know how you feel. I know what you went through. You're not alone. And, we don't have to be afraid anymore. And for me, the work that I do with my men is, I work with everything from, I've worked with young 18-year-olds in college to, billionaires actually. And we all have the same wounds. We all just want to be loved. We want to feel good enough. We want our dads to say, hey, I'm proud of you. We want our moms to hug and kiss us, and we want a woman who really respects and appreciates us. I think all men, regardless of your background, your career, your wealth, we all want that. And, my wounds and identifying what I went through and why I did all the dumb shit I did back in the day to prove myself, I can look at it and laugh and speak about it with just full transparency because I love who I've become. And I could look back on who I was and I could have compassion for all the things I did. I'm not going to call them mistakes. I could say they were necessary experiences I need to have for me to realize what's truly important. So when I work with men, I have no problem be fully vulnerable and honest and say things that a lot of men wouldn't because they're worried about looking bad or being judged. But it's like, fuck it. I really love who I've become as a result of making peace with my hurt little child and accepting all the crazy stuff that happened in my life. And just like you, to be the example of like, hey, this is what it looks like when you're willing to go to those dark places, to look in the shadow, to shine the light and see, okay, there's some stuff there that I've pushed down for a very long time and I'm ready to face it. Because the minute you choose to look in the shadows and take on what you've been too scared to look at, that's the minute you take control of your life. That's the moment you start creating your new future.
That's power, man.
Yeah.
That's power. And there are two beautiful images that just came through as you're speaking. I pictured a little Z and a little Adam, just like in their little child playing together. And you mentioned that loneliness, which we know there's like a massive loneliness epidemic now with, I think across, both women and men, but particularly with men, where I was mentioning, there's like 1 in 7 men that can't name a friend. It's like, that's a crazy sad statistic.
Yeah.
And we think about how loneliness, like in torture in prison, what do they call it? Solitary confinement. Yeah. Like that's the greatest torture you can provide to someone.
Yeah.
And when you think about how loneliness is pervading across men, it's no wonder why there's this toxicity that emerges, because I'm alone and I don't have anybody around me to confide in. And then that's where I think a lot of the Machiavellian, the dark triad of behaviors start to come out, because the world's now hurt me. So I'm out there to hurt the world back. And it's due to that I believe it is that loneliness that not only men have from each other, but I think also men have from themselves.
Absolutely. A lot of that loneliness is self-inflicted isolation because they feel guilty. They feel shame. They feel like they don't belong. They feel like they're not worthy. So slowly they start becoming more and more reclusive, cutting people off. They just start detaching from the world. And then they just accept that that's their new reality. And unfortunately, loneliness is one of the greatest causes of suicide. And as we know, 3 out of 4 suicides are men. The numbers are only rising. Suicide and mental health issues were a major problem before the pandemic, and COVID and all that craziness just amplified everything. And that's why it's so important, the work that you're doing with ManCamp and with your men's group as well, because men need to know that they're not alone, they're not fucked up, that they have support, and that they're not going to be judged. That is really what's so important. I remember Donald said this when we were at Dimension. He shared something so profound that I always remember. He said, healing happens when you feel safe to open up and share. You feel safe that you won't be judged and that you're heard and seen. And then you share a profound experience together. And that's why something as simple as a men's circle or the dinners that I host are so transformative and healing, because you're in a space where you're not going to be judged or laughed at. You feel you can share and open up and say what's been pushed down. Mm-hmm. And you're having this dynamic experience together where you're connecting and relating to other brothers, and you realize, wow, okay, there's other guys out there like me that are going through the same thing. And that's why, whether it be a men's circle session, whether it be a 2-hour dinner, that can be the turning point for them to realize, okay, I don't have to be alone. I don't have to take the drugs. I don't have to kill myself.
Yeah.
And
sometimes I think isn't even like this intellectualized realization. I think it's actually this like on a soul level, like on a nervous system level, where there's a relaxation that can happen. And another quote came through as you were saying that. It was a Jungian quote of, loneliness doesn't come from not having people around you, but for not being able to share the things that are important to you. Mm. And some of us just not realizing like those things that are important to us are like deep in the recesses of vulnerability, of our emotions, or our sexuality, of our, where we feel weak. And as men, again, we've been conditioned to like, God forbid you share how, you're not succeeding in the areas that you want to, because then we might be not chosen or perceived as weak.
You're not good enough. Yeah. You're not a man.
Not a man, not good enough. Like, fuck, those sting. But that's like almost this humming in the background of so many men's, minds these days. Yeah. And where I think there's so much medicine in the men's work too is, you think about a lot of our, your generation, our generation, of our first impressions of masculine energy. It usually came from probably our fathers, maybe brothers, but ultimately many environments where that wasn't actually a wholesome representation of masculinity, to no fault of their own, because, whether our fathers or
learned from their fathers.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's like the buck is stopping here.
Yeah.
But if those first impressions on all these boys is not one of, healthy masculinity, then that imprint in how we relate and perceive other men is actually, it's more activating and sympathetic and perceived almost as a threat in a way. And then that's what can feed this like hierarchical, competitive nature of men. And where I think there's so much medicine in the men's groups where, again, you said that it's that healing together and that safety where we can share parts of ourselves. We can be not just accepted, but actually celebrated for it. Yeah. And reprogramming what it feels like to be in the presence of masculine energy. And it's almost like exposure therapy that way, mm-hmm. where you're getting acquainted with the threat, kind of like a hormetic effect almost, where you can get closer and closer to other men to the point where it's no longer perceived as a threat, mm-hmm. but it's now contained within what I think the true essence of masculinity is, which is safety, which is trust, that ability to surrender. And I think men's groups are, as someone that's done, ayahuasca 20 times, I've done the Hoffman process, the dimensions things, all these different healing experiences, men's work and being in the presence of other men in these containers keeps showing up as the most powerful medicine. Yeah. And that's why I'm so passionate about sharing it, because it's that archetype of the wounded healer. It helps me a lot. It's clearly doing wonders for you too, and we'll keep going. Yeah, absolutely. As you said, I feel activated throughout, because I feel like the work we're doing is so deep. It's so ancestral. It's so within us. And what I mean by that is, as men, as warriors in the tribe, if we were not accepted, if we were not supporting each other, watching each other's back, we got eaten by the lion, or we got attacked by the enemies. And masculinity is so fractured because as men, we don't trust one another.
we don't support one another. And it comes back to the father, right? If we can't trust and rely on our father's support, how are we going to rely on that from other men? And that's why, you said this earlier, we are the generation to redefine masculinity. We are the generation to create a new type of leader, a new type of father, provider. And that's why this work and these conversations right now are so important, because, I love the fact that you're 31 and you're thinking on this level, because you're reaching a whole different demographic than I can, and I feel that it takes people like you, myself, and many of our other friends who are in this work to be the example, because when men can feel safe being with other men, one of the exercises I did last week at my retreat was just simple eye gazing, and for most men, they can't look at another man in the eyes for more than a few seconds, because, okay, is it I'm intimidated? Am I gay? Is it like, why is it awkward? So when you joke, you look away, and we can't look at one another and be with one another because there's this, either it's a threat, it's an insecurity, there is a lack of depth and connection that we have to one another. And if we can't be connected, if we can't really believe in one another, then how are we going to support each other and get through this war on masculinity and, in my and your opinion, the war on humanity? There is a massive war happening right now on the spiritual planes, multi-dimensional planes, here in the physical plane, our water, our air, our food, our sacred relationships, it's all being attacked. And if you don't believe me and you think I'm crazy, it's okay, but time will tell. I mean, it's all coming to the surface, and it's so obvious. And if us as men can't come together to support one another, to fight the good fight, to defend ourselves, our wives, our children, our homes, then how are we going to make it through this?
We're not. And just, yeah, man, spine just like tingles everywhere now, because I think guys like us that have been on this like spiritual path, and I think that looks different for everyone, but what is coming up for me, it's like this gladiator energy that we're being called to war, because that is what it feels like. And that's where like that ability, I think for guys like you and I to eye gaze, it's because we've done a lot of inner work, there's self-love, so there's no shame in being seen and being able to be saying things like, it's a multi-dimensional spiritual war that, that techno-tyranny is blasting on us. And there's no part of me that feels resistant to that for being ostracized, because that's just like a deep truth that...
And you don't have to buy my truth or your truth. They don't have to listen.
No.
We can own our own truth and stand in that power.
But
right?
Talk about looking for purpose for people, anyone that's can't find it. There's a lot of purpose in being called to war.
Yeah.
We see that at any vibration, where to unite against a common enemy, and not to be in divisive consciousness, but to be in finding like what is something worth fighting for. Mm-hmm. And that's why I thought that identifying enemies and threats exercise is so powerful, because I think that's something that we want to do as men. We want to serve to a higher cause. Mm-hmm. The boy wants to serve himself. The man that's looking for purpose wants to fight a fight beyond him. And I really feel like all those things you just said are like so true.
Yeah.
And that it is, to what your point earlier, they're trying to weaken us from that war with, the diminishing levels of testosterone through many different avenues, whether, like you said, air quality, the water quality, the atrazine in the water, even the distraction from the problem itself, where, you're talking about the future of the sacred family unit. Well, we look at all the, I don't call it propaganda, but all of the narrative around, concern around the climate and the threats there, like those are real. But, some study would suggest that carbon crisis is like a 60-year, 50-year concern. 20 to 25 years, the fertility issue is more prevalent. So there will be empty cities for the next generation if current rates continue for the decrease in fertility in men. And I don't believe that to be an accident.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And to prepare for these battles, to prepare for the war, it's in the daily choices you make. It is in the routines you have. It is in the discipline you instill in yourself. And it is choosing to be in integrity and do what's hard over what's easy each and every day. Because as you mentioned, there is a lot of I'll call it fuckery going on out there. And we can choose to just kind of like, nah, there's nothing I can do about it, and turn and look in the other direction. Or you could say, I'm not okay with that. And I'm going to do what's within my power to make sure that we stay sovereign in our household. Yeah. I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure my family's taken care of. And to do that, you got to take care of yourself, which means you got to eat well. You got to train. You got to have a connection to God, faith, spiritual universe, whatever. You have to be solid and integral within yourself if you want to radiate that energy and create that in the world around you. And that's why this war and this battle starts within yourself. And, we touched on it earlier, just a broken masculinity. There's a lot of men, young men, who may watch this and be like, okay, well, where do I start? Their fathers may not be a great example for them. They may be watching porn every night or playing video games, smoking weed. So, you've created your community, Men's Alchemy. You've created ManCamp. I would love for you to share a little bit about, first off, your inspiration behind creating that, and also how would someone who has a different friend group, different, set of hobbies or activities or whatnot, how does someone make that transition from their current life where they are into becoming more conscious, more awakened, more integral?
Get into a bad relationship's a good starting point.
Hit a rock bottom.
Yeah, go to Nasara and see what, no, I'm kidding. I guess there's two questions there. There's how to step into that men's work, or find one into whether it's, I think, in men's work or participating in it, so leading or participating, and then to find one on that spiritual journey, that awakening of consciousness. That's a great question. I haven't thought too much about, but I would say what lended to mine has been my ongoing, lifelong devotion to maintenance of my physical body. I do believe that the physical is a gateway to the mental, to the emotional, and the spiritual, and that by regularly not just exercising but detoxing and purifying, that is what allows this vessel to be a conduit for that God energy, that greater spiritual guidance that I know is what led me into that dark night, because that was the path I needed to go on. Whereas if I was calcified and rigid and really in the confines of the matrix, that would have protected me and probably kept me on a path that was rigid, linear. If I was depressed, I was taking antidepressants, Wellbutrin and the remedies. But it was actually when I gave those up that I really also went onto that spiritual path. So I think a lot of awakening does come through the physical body, and why I'm so devoted to the maintenance and ongoing
and what does that look like for you? Is you said ice bath before, sauna. What other practices do you think are important to keep the body in a cleansed state?
Well, saunas for sure. So detoxing is a huge part. So detoxing of the microplastics, of the heavy metals. Again, the microplastics and the heavy metals and all the xenoestrogens. So these are, again, what are disrupting our body's natural functions for producing healthy testosterone production, being truly vital and being able to channel in that life force energy. So detoxing through sauna is an amazing way. Ice baths, again, this is where I've been so passionate about, is that ability to do hard things, to challenge ourselves in ways that seem crazy, but it's that doing something hard that shows you have the confidence, the power, and the resilience to do that in life. And then for me, it's always been eating super clean, so organic where I can. A lot of red meat, minimizing any chemicals, any sugars, and the water quality, like I was saying earlier. I'm just obsessed with water. Water is life. And when we realize that there are these chemicals that are put in our water, there's the fluoride, the chlorine, the atrazine, the pharmaceuticals that are interfering with the divine purity that we came into this world with. So starting with those, and I think things naturally start to fall into place for that inherent vital life force that wishes to beget aliveness within us. And I think the spiritual path will naturally happen as a result. Mm-hmm. That's only my journey, so I can only speak from my experience, but it's been mind, body, spirit have always moved in tandem. Yeah. And then to that second part of your question is, how did that even lead me to the men's work, where it was like I said, like during that dark night of the soul where I really realized that there's this brokenness in my masculinity. I went online. There's the Mankind Project, which is another amazing organization I recommend people look at. I went to some of the circles and programs there, and it didn't really, it was a more mature crowd and felt like an older program. So there's always just been that entrepreneurial nature in me that wants to do things my way or just ways that would fit my model. And a lot of it too was inspired by the book King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, that where I think's creator also weaves things into me was during that healing journey. I was at an Indigo, and sticking out one of the sections was that book, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. And I pulled it out, I read that book, and that's to this day the book I've gifted the most to men, because it is what really showed me the importance of graduating from boy consciousness to that mature masculine. And that's also what we based ManCamp on, as the 4 masculine archetypes. So we can unpack that a little bit more as well. And then to any of the men that might be listening, that, or the boys, if you want to still call yourself that are seeking to find a men's circle, that's actually one of the problems I'm trying to solve, because even in Toronto, where it seems like there's a lot of work happening, there doesn't seem to be enough of them. And that's why I started my men's Alchemy group, and born out of ManCamp, there have been many other circles. But if you want to start one yourself, that's where I would encourage the listeners to reach out to me. I have a number of friends that have reached out that are not in Toronto, and they said, Adam, I want to lead a men's circle. And I just created these Notion documents of my run of shows of what I do to them. And it's just kind of fully open source. Like if you want to start a men's circle, hit me up. I'll give you that playbook. And to me, it's just that way to distribute the healing, and more men doing the work is, it doesn't have to be perfect. Just getting men in a room together is miles.
Yeah. And I'd like you to expand on that, because for some people listening, they've never heard of a men's circle before. And, you first hear of it, they might think, is it a circle jerk? Like, what the fuck are they doing in this circle, And again, because we're in the work, we take for granted that everybody knows what like a men's circle is, And so can you share a little bit about what that actually looks like? Because for some people listening or watching this, they're going to be like, yeah, I need to be a part of one of those. So can you please just explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So my thesis for when I started the Men's Alchemy group in Toronto, shortly after leaving my last job, was really founded on that same theory I shared about de-energizing any hostility that's felt between men's nervous systems. Okay. So just that process of being in a room with only men with the intention of opening up. Like, some of the hardest part for these men that were showing up for the first time was just getting there, because of that nervousness of being in, a room with just men, which might have previously been in locker rooms. It was an all boys school. Maybe that wasn't like a particularly welcoming environment. So that intentionality, it's like, and again, this is something I think is very masculine, is men create containers, and those should be containers of safety. So it starts with just creating that. And then for me, the programming was these 3-hour events where I learned a lot of beautiful practices on emotional regulation during my time with Othership and facilitating breath work, which was starting with bring the men in, and actually starting with some opening up, just sharing, because we obviously wanted to see like, who are we doing this work with, to again create further safety, and then moving into breath work, which I know is something you're also a huge proponent of. But doing that, getting out of the mind into the bodies, and just continuing to harmonize and actually do vocal toning too, to sync up our nervous systems. Because I really believe that it's so much of the strength and the safety that we can provide is when we are on one unified frequency. And then each one would go into a theme where we would break out into pod groups on the theme of, perhaps it was, the first one we did was trust and safety in the masculine. So just openly sharing, like get into a group of 6, there'd usually be like 30 to 40 guys, share your name and just share, what does trust mean to you? What does safety mean to you? And it's like within minutes, sometimes guys are already crying because it might just be that permission to surrender.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what, thank you for sharing that. And because it's not that complicated. It's not that complicated, but what it is men showing up with a shared intention of, I want to be real. I want to connect. I want to express, and I want to feel safe. And when you have 30 or 40 men in a room who are just showing up in that way, who have been given permission, who are asked questions that they've been dying to answer and talk about, but they just don't feel brave enough or even allowed to, it's so simply, it's so profound. And I do something similar at my dinners where I break groups up into tables of 6, and under every dinner plate, there's a question that you have to read out loud. And everybody at the table reads a question, and then you answer it yourself. So everybody at the table answers a question, and then you answer it yourself. And then one by one, each person reads their question. And the questions start off light, like, hey, if you were a superhero, who would you be, or what would be your superpower? But then it gets into, what would you change about your childhood? Then it gets into, what has your father never said to you that you wish he would? And it gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And by design, that they're given permission to talk about something, about themselves. And then they are invited to go deeper and to share more. And what you notice is the sharing gets deeper as it goes around. Each person's willing to, okay, let me go in a little more. Let me go in a little more. And often people leave those dinners, and I call them the human experience.
Yeah.
Play on the word human, right?
Love it.
And often they will leave and they'll say, that was one of the most profound experiences of my life. And it's a 2-hour dinner in a beautiful restaurant eating yummy
No medicine.
food. No medicine. We are the medicine.
Yeah.
When we come together and we hold space for one another and we allow ourselves to be seen, heard, and supported, we are creating the medicine together.
We are.
Yeah.
That medicine, I think, really is that permission for others to feel safe around us.
Yeah.
If that's something people are looking for purpose in their life, it's learn to connect with yourself, with your own nervous system, with that capacity to create safety for yourself so you can bestow that gift upon others.
Yeah.
Because, again, a dinner with yummy food or, my circles were sitting on a floor and, sharing, but that medicine can be so profound. And it is that permission that as we give it to each other, we then take that back out to the world and those ripples make waves.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. Well, I got to say, Adam, you've come a long way from that lost young man that I met in the jungles of Costa Rica who didn't know which way he was going, coming, going, staying. You were really in a moment. And what's funny is I actually invited you to stay to join my retreat when you were there, but you were like, oh, I'm not sure. I think I got to go. And you came back and everything happened the way it did perfectly. But it's interesting. Often you look back and think, if I had made the choice the other way, what would life be like? And for any men watching, you have a choice. You can keep doing what you're doing and you'll keep getting what you're getting. But if anything resonated at all in this conversation about digging deeper, facing the trauma, facing what might have happened in childhood, healing the fragmented, broken, masculine part of you, then reach out to Adam, to myself, to someone who will hear you, see you, and support you, because we don't have to do it alone. We can't do it alone. This is too deep. This is too deep to do alone. And if we don't choose to do this work, if we don't choose to heal, we're going to pass it on to our children. And I don't want to sound doomsday-ish, but we're running out of time. We really are. We've got about 40, 50 years maybe to turn the ship around.
That's being generous, I'd say.
Yeah.
I think we got 5 to 10 years to really get our asses in gear.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's when we unite, it's something we got to do together. And that's these brotherhoods that we forge. We get to redefine what brotherhood looks like moving forward. And I think that's what's going to save the world.
Absolutely. And, touching back on purpose again, you want to feel like a man, you want to feel like your life has meaning, then join the good fight, do your part, get to the gym in the morning, do your sauna, cold plunge, eat good food, show up for your family, for your loved ones, make the hard choices for the sake of doing what's right. Because I believe intuitively we all know the difference between right and wrong. Put down that bottle, put away the joystick, put away the porn, just show up. Show up. It's not that hard. It's not that hard to figure out, but it's hard to do consistently.
It's hard to do alone.
Yeah, it's hard to do alone. Yeah. When you're with like-minded people who are on the same vibration and
it's accountability.
Yeah. And it's the same wavelength. It's like, okay, we're doing this together,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my man, I'm happy to be doing this together with you. You know, we are on parallel missions, and I can see our work intertwining in the near future. You know, I would love to collab and do something where we bring some young men from your community, some of my guys, and we just learn, grow, and share together.
That's the way forward, bro.
That's it. Let's make it happen.
If you enjoyed this podcast and you learned something valuable, then please hit subscribe so you don't miss the future episodes. I'd love it if you share this with a friend and leave us a review. Your feedback is so important to our growth. Thank you for supporting the Path to Purpose podcast. I appreciate you. I'll see you in the next episode.